What's up everyone, I'm Gushi and welcome to the channel. In this video we're going to be going over my build which gives you infinite spirit for a certain amount of time through one of the graces you can get called the Grace of Zhuanxu, the Black Emperor. What we really want is the 5th effect in the said bonus, the Subtlety of Water Phase. When you successfully perform a fatal strike, you gain the Subtlety of Water Phase benefit. Performing actions that would normally consume spirit would instead consume no spirit. With this hybrid spirit break and spellcaster build, we can quickly take down an enemy's spirit with that fatal strike and continually spam our spells. Quickly going over the other set bonuses, we get a reduced deflect spirit consumption, a decrease to our water phase spell spirit consumption, which is pretty useful since we're using spells a lot, fatal strike damage, spirit attack spirit damage, which is the primary way you're going to be taking chunks out of enemies' spirit bars. So we're fully utilizing every effect from this grace. If we take a look at this example, reducing deflect consumption helps us deflect those red attacks. Once our spirit bar is full, using the spirit attack takes a huge chunk out of the enemy's spirit. Once they're staggered, we get that increased bonus to fatal strike damage, and of course with the Subtlety of Water we get to spam our spells. So this grace creates a perfect game loop between spirit damage and spellcasting. Alright, moving on to our gear. Of course we need 6 pieces of gear to get this set bonus because that Subtlety of Water phase is super important. So we got the grace on our melee weapon, ranged weapon, and all of the armor pieces. Now I want to get this out of the way. The Subtlety of Water special effect, which gives you that infinite spirit, definitely is not overpowered, as the duration is pretty damn short. So the base duration is 5 seconds, but because this buff starts before the fatal strike animation, you lose 3 seconds waiting for the animation, leaving you only 2 seconds to cast spells infinitely. And this is the primary reason that this grace is kind of underwhelming. You could still get some spells in, but it's definitely not overpowered. I really think that Team Ninja should change this so that the timer starts when you do damage to the enemy from a fatal strike, which would give us 2 more seconds of this buff, making it a lot more useful. Alright, next going over the other chants we have on our gear. The 2 most important enchants that we want are Ice Attack Power and Water Damage. This will maximize the amount of spell damage that we get, fully utilizing the limited time we have infinite spirit. So I have that on all my gear except my legs, which I have wizard spell damage instead of water, which in this case is pretty much the same thing. Next we also want to damage amp the enemy. This increases the damage they take. This damage amp is easily applied with a single wizard spell hit. And as you can see from the damage numbers, the first spell hit does a little less damage without the perk procced, and then after that our damage jumps. Next we also want to buff ourselves, and we could do this with the positive effect Power Gain. Now mine's procs by successfully deflecting a critical blow, but ideally you want a power gain on wizard spell as well. The next important enchant is positive effect duration. Because that Subtlety of Water buff lasts so short, we want to increase this as much as we can. So anywhere you can, just add that positive effect duration. I have it on 3 pieces of my gear, each giving 3%, giving us an almost 10% increase. So looking at my whole stat spread here, we're getting a plus 125 to Ice Attack Power, 10% water damage, 8% wizard spell damage. If you saw my gear, this is something I'm still kind of on the fence with. I got 5% status effect accumulation, and then 24% chill accumulation on enemies. The chill negative effect isn't that powerful, but what you're really using it for is that extra stun when enemies do get the status effect, which in some cases can be handy to get a little bit more damage in. Of course we got that 9% positive effect duration, and the damage amp and power gain. Moving on to our points, I'm maxing out the water virtue, mainly for 2 reasons. Of course we want to maximize our ice spell damage, but we also want to max out our stealth, as this also does increase our fatal strike damage when you're in stealth. This is how I do almost 4,000 damage in that clip in the intro. I'm only at morale rank 3 against this mini boss, which is morale rank 23, and this takes out more than half of his health. As for our other stats, we have 8 in Fire Virtue just for amplified damage, and the rest into Wood Virtue because the weapon that we're using scales off both water and wood. As far as weapons go, the staff is definitely the best at reducing the enemy's spirit bar, but honestly grace drops are kind of low, and to get it on a specific weapon is kinda hard. So really just use the weapon that has the grace on it. Hopefully it also scales off water. If you don't, you could kind of offset the damage by adding an ice enchant. This is basically the equivalent of using this spell that coats your weapon in ice, but it's an enchant so it doesn't cost any spirit. Alright, moving on to accessories, this is the ones I have. I definitely need a reroll for better ones, but I just chose ones with ice attack power or water. For the Divine Beast, I'm using Qinglong, mostly because it's a pretty safe option, but you could definitely go with Tingxie, as it does increase spirit damage to enemies with negative effects. Another really good alternative is Yinglong. This will give you a free revive if you die. So if you are running light armor and you're afraid of getting one shot, this might be a better option instead of worrying about when to heal at the right time. Next, I wanted to go over the different spells that you can use during that time of infinite spirit, so we know which one has the most DPS and the ones you should avoid. The one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is the health bar after the fatal strike and how much damage it does until the buff runs out and I completely run out of spirit. So definitely the best one is Frost Lance, as his health bar is reduced to almost half. Next, we're using Unrelenting Frost. This one maybe takes out a fifth of his health, but definitely does a lot less damage, 22 per tick. I also tried the Frozen Spear Trap. This one does a lot of damage and comes out real quick, but the problem is that it has to touch the enemy directly for the trap to despawn. But if you try to set another one and the previous one is still there, then it will just replace it. Also, the range is kinda short. I also tried weird spells like Phantom Icicle. This is supposed to reduce the enemy's targeting. You can see the status effect is active by the icon under the enemy's spirit bar, but yeah, I still get hit by a lot of attacks, so just not a good status effect. Don't use. We got some trash ones like Malignant Icefall. The animation is just so long and you can't even stun lock a human. Definitely the worst spell of them all. Next up is Frozen Arrow, and this one is pretty interesting. Unlike the Ice Trap, you can set multiple ones at a time, and after like 12 seconds they fire at the enemy. Now against humans this is kind of bad, as the tracking isn't great and sometimes the icicles miss, but because the cast animation is really fast and it does a decent amount of damage, this could be good against bosses. However, that 12 seconds it takes to activate and actually fire is painfully slow. If this timing gets a little bit of a buff, it could be a pretty good option for when the best spell, Ominous Chill, probably gets in there. Now obviously Ominous Chill is only good against larger enemies where all the icicles can hit. Definitely your best tool to take out larger enemies. However, with Subtlety of Water, there's one thing to keep in mind that you can't really spam it. Again, just like the Ice Trap, if you summon one after the other, they replace the previous one summoned before, so if you cast too fast, as seen in this clip, you just continually replace each icicle, making it not do any damage. So something to keep in mind, just add a little bit of a delay after casting Ominous Chill, waiting for the icicles to hit, and then summoning another one. As mentioned before, we have 8 points in Fire Virtue for amplified damage. You want to be using this right after you get the stagger and right before the fatal strike, both so you can do more damage with the fatal strike, and all the spells that you cast infinitely will get that buff as well. Now for bosses, Subtlety of Water is just alright, again because the duration is low, and you have the requirements to get a fatal strike to even proc that effect. So where Subtlety of Water really shines is against mobs. While roaming around, because the AI is kinda dumb, it's really easy to sneak up on enemies, get that massive fatal strike damage, and easily spam spells to finish them off. Even against lower level enemies, getting that fatal strike against one to spam spells against another enemy is pretty useful. With the small increase to positive effect duration, the Subtlety of Water effect is more than enough time to finish most enemies that aren't bosses. Alright, for the final part of this video, I just wanted to show how to farm for this grace. There's a decent amount of graces, and to get this specific one on each piece of gear does take a little bit of time, so here's how to farm them. You do have to beat the game and unlock the Rising Dragon or New Game Plus difficulty. From there you can farm part 2 Tale of Guiguzi. Here all you have to do is defeat the Monkey, and you have a chance for graces to drop on 4-star gear or higher. This can drop weapons or armor, but I found that ranged weapons is pretty scarce. So to get a ranged weapon with that grace, you can farm part 4 at the main battlefield, Centuries of Glory Burned. All you have to do is run through the mission and go to a specific chest, just follow the path on screen. Just make sure to not get hit by the lightning as it will stun lock you, making you restart the run. All you have to do is go to this point and you'll find a chest right over here. As long as you hit open on the chest, you'll get the items and you can respawn back at a battle flag, where you can travel to the same battlefield and start up another run. With that, that's everything you guys need to know about this crazy grace that gives you infinite spirit. If you found this video helpful, please drop a like and consider subscribing. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one, and GG.